Hello, Heartful Parent family. It is time for this week's bonus episode of the podcast. These little bonus episodes are my gift to you because, as you've heard me say, inevitably, time and time again, we were never meant to parent alone. And I know that all of us, myself included, have so many questions about parenting. In the work that I do and the many hats that I wear, one of my very favorite things is getting and answering questions from parents and getting to support you, you, on your journey. So each week I'm taking one real question from a listener or a subscriber to my newsletter and I'm diving in. So on that note, here we go with this week's question.
It's Friday, which means we are back for another bonus episode of the Heartful Parent Podcast, where I answer your questions. Okay, up this week is a great question. And like some of them, it's a little bit long, so I'm just going to read it to you. So here is a mom who says, how much do I push my child to accomplish and succeed? I'm a laid back parent, the opposite of a tiger mom, and her mental health is my first priority. So far, I've only pushed for things I find particularly important. For example, learning how to swim, doing an extracurricular physical activity at least one day a week, completing homework to the best of her ability, but not to be a perfectionist. But sometimes I wonder if I'm doing her a disservice by not pushing her to do more, get better grades, practice piano, etc., etc. I see other people really concerned about their kids' academics and getting into a good school, preparing them for a future in which they can have job security. At what point do I need to push her or encourage her to push herself? Okay, I love this question. And I want to start by saying the things that you have pushed your child on, learning how to swim, doing extracurricular physical activity, and completing homework, eminently reasonable. Eminently reasonable. Okay, first of all, I'm a believer that of all of those, especially the learning to swim is a non-negotiable. It's just non-negotiable. There are too many places and opportunities for a child or an adult, frankly, to drown. And it's just not okay for them to not know how to swim. So yes, push that. And anyone listening to this, if you haven't taught your child how to swim yet, please teach them how to swim. Please teach them how to swim. Maybe not yourself, but somebody teach them how to swim. Okay, and those other things that you mentioned, the extracurricular physical activity, the doing homework, all of those seem really reasonable. So in this question, there was the tiger mom personality mentioned, and we do have a lot of so-called tiger moms, if you will, in, sort of functioning in the world today. And it's not always obvious. Like if you read the book, I forget what it's called exactly, The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mom or something, Amy Chua describes, and I read it years ago, so it's been a long time, but like she talks about sitting down at the piano and like drilling and drilling and drilling, like not being kind, frankly being, it sounded to me fairly brutal in the way that, she was making her child learn piano or do various activities. That doesn't feel good for anybody. And frankly, I don't condone that style of parenting. But we have a lot of people who are kind of engaging in what I might call like hidden tiger mom parenting, right? Which is where there's a ton of pressure to go to the best school, or to take the most difficult classes, to get perfect grades, to be in all of the different activities, all with this idea that we are getting them ready for college, right? And there's a ton of pressure put on that. Now, there's a fabulous, fabulous TED Talk out there by Julie Lythcott-Haims, who's also the author of the book, How to Raise an Adult. And she did a TED Talk about this pressure so that we put on kids, all with the idea of them getting into like a handful of elite colleges, right? Or just college in general. And I do think that that is a component of the mental health challenges that we are seeing in kids today. So I'm not a big fan. I think kids there needs to be structure. There needs to be some expectations and some guidance, but it really needs to be self-driven, self-motivated. And that can be difficult to do. So yes, it is our job to set as I just said, to set structure, to provide guidance, to set expectations. And we can go far too far in that, into the tiger mom style, which is really authoritarian parenting. But the problem is that we can slip too far into the other side as well, which is permissive parenting. And permissive parenting is, can look a lot of different ways, but a lot of times it really is, there's lots of understanding of emotions. We're very kind, we're very loving, lots of connection-based stuff, but not a lot of boundaries, guidance, or expectations. And that can leave kids feeling adrift, and I think can also contribute to mental health challenges. I think it's one of the unfortunate side effects that we're seeing in our country of people not really understanding what positive discipline or positive parenting means. It is still incumbent upon us to be the captain of the ship, to be the person who is really, driving the boat and making sure that structure, guidance, and expectations are present. That creates safety for our kids. It really does. So if you've got a kid who's taking piano lessons, teaching them, and first of all, before we get kids involved in anything, I'm a big fan of exploring with them what is interesting to them, right? And not dictating everything that they do. So it might be really important to you that your child plays an instrument. The question is, does your child want to play an instrument? And if not, is there a middle ground? Is there some, room for compromise? Or is there something else that they could do that would give them many of the same benefits that playing an instrument might give them, right? In terms of their brains or whatever. So we want to definitely make sure that we're getting our kids' input. But then once they are engaged in an activity, I think what we can do is help them develop grit by teaching them to stick with it. So, for example, last year, my younger daughter was taking dance and she didn't love it. She wasn't loving it. And I said, well, you asked to take the dance class. You've already started learning the routine for the recital. Like, your classmates are depending on you. And so our expectation is that you finish out the dance class. And the funny thing is, she finished it out and then decided she actually did enjoy it and wanted to do it again this year. And this year I'm hearing no complaints whatsoever. So, there is value in teaching our kids to stick with things, at least through the season, right? Or at least through the school year or whatever it might be, before they explore something else. Now, there's also times, and this is going to sound super wishy-washy, but there are also times where it is appropriate to let a child quit. When I was young, I was on a soccer team that we had one coach that was great, and then it was taken over by another coach the next year, and that coach was not great. His daughter was on the team. His daughter became quite the little bully, and I was miserable, and I hated it every day. And my parents saw how miserable I was, and they did let me leave soccer and find another activity. So I ended up in gymnastics, which I did for a number of years and loved. So it's a matter of finding the thing that's the right thing. And then we do want to, encourage them to put their best in. And when it gets hard, to stick with it, right? That's how we help them develop that grit and that resilience, which is really, really important. With all of this, we want to make sure that we are speaking to our children and engaging with our children in such a way that the motivation ultimately is coming from them, right? We want to empower them. We want to encourage them. And we want to build that intrinsic motivation. One of the things we talk about in the Heartful Parent Academy is the difference between encouragement and praise, and why praise can actually be really negative and encouragement can be really positive. We want to fall in that encouraging space while we are exploring what our children enjoy, what they want for themselves. We also want to model for them resilience and grit and getting in dirty when the going gets tough, right? Like sticking with things. So that's another way that we can do all of this. Now, this is going to sound like a complete non sequitur. Like you're like, whoop, how did that make any sense? But here's how we do all of this. We also need to be making our children do chores and participate in the work of the family. Julie Lythcott-Haims actually talks about this in her TED Talk. She talks about it in her book. And there is a really good research about the idea that the kids who do the best ultimately, socially, emotionally, cognitively, succeed in life. And I think in her book, and I don't have it in front of me, she describes success as like having a job, having a healthy relationship, not using, drugs or getting addicted to something, and a number of other kind of like basic things. Like that's the benchmark for success. And those kids who do chores and are required to do chores and participate in the work of the family are the kids who see the highest levels of success under that definition. And so chores also help develop resilience, help develop grit. They give our kids a sense of belonging and significance, which is the foundation of positive discipline and the psychology behind positive discipline. And so I would be adding those to the list of non-negotiables that we already talked about, right? Learning how to swim is a non-negotiable. Completing your homework, I think, is a reasonable non-negotiable. Doing some sort of physical activity, again, reasonable non-negotiable. I would add to that chores. I would add chores to that. So to answer this question more succinctly, I don't think being a tiger mom is a healthy form of parenting. That is not consistent with what I teach or encourage at the Heartful Parent Collective. It does a lot of things that are a disservice to our kids, in my opinion. I also don't think being a permissive parent serves our kids well and going to the complete opposite side of the spectrum. I think it is incumbent upon us to set structure, provide guidance, set expectations, all of those things, while giving our kids a voice as well to figure out what they want to explore, how they want to explore it, how long they want to explore it for, right? Whether it's a season, a year, or 10 years. We really want to work from the beginning to encourage and empower them as much as possible so that the ball is in their court and they are developing those skills themselves. I hope that was helpful. Again, this is one of those questions that comes in. I'm like, oh my goodness, we could talk for days about this. There's so much to dig into here, but I think it's a great question and it's an important one to explore because it is a little bit of walking that tightrope, right? Between setting those expectations and also giving our kids the ability to drive their own destiny, if you will. All right. Hope that was helpful. As always, tons of content inside the Heartful Parent Academy. If you hear me mention the Academy and you've heard about it, but you don't really know what it is, go to my website at theheartfulparent.com and click on the tab that says the Heartful Parent Academy. That will tell you more. We'll be talking about it here in another podcast as well. It is an incredible resource, if I do say so myself, at an incredibly low price. It's like less than $1 a day to give you all the parenting support and resources that you need to succeed and to thrive and to feel good about what's going on in your home. I'd love to see you inside. Hope this answer helped. If you are struggling with this or something similar and want to ask a follow-up question, please email me, Christy@theheartfulparent.com. Cheers, everybody.
All right, listeners, thanks so much for coming along with me for this week's bonus episode. If you would like your question answered, drop me an email at Christy@theheartfulparent.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can also go to my website at theheartfulparent.com and sign up for my newsletter, where you receive the inside scoop on everything Heartful Parent, and it's delivered weekly to your inbox. Better yet, if you would like more answers to the parenting questions challenging you, and or you would just like to support my work here at the Heartful Parent, there is no better way to do that than to join the Heartful Parent Academy. Inside the Academy, you get direct access to me, to get all your questions answered at least 3 times a month. And the more members, the more access I will offer. So use coupon code PODCAST to try out your first month for only $7. You can find the join link on my website. I feel so incredibly grateful that you let me into your lives every week and now twice a week. And I'm also so grateful to those who support the work that I'm doing. I truly cannot do this without you. Thanks so much. Cheers, everyone. I will see you next week.